welcome to the channel. My name is Goblin, and this is our weekly TTRPG book club, where I go through some of the basics of some systems which you may not have seen or may not have experienced before. It's just a little bit of a tease, a little bit of a taste of what the system offers, and of course, as always, we have Syrinscape in the background providing amazing audio. And this is the actual Syrinscape sci-fi player. We're running the Cyberpunk Forlorn Hope live gig music in the background because I absolutely love it. It gets me in the mood for ShadowRun, even though it's Cyberpunk. Sorry, it's how it is. They don't actually have ShadowRun, they've got Cyberpunk instead, but that's okay. So ShadowRun is a game system which I really like. I've had only a little bit of experience before with it. Unfortunately, I won't have much more, but the edition that I had experience with had some printing issues, and the GM at the time, and the GM and his friend, who both had copies, had their books disintegrate. And yes, they sent them back, but they were running games, so sending them back meant massive delays in the game and it didn't restart. But I liked the game. I really, really liked the game. And so there's a new version of Shadowrun, Shadowrun 6th World. It's the 6th edition. And there's some issues from what I hear. So we're going to have a look at the quick start rules, because I do want to actually run the quick start rules, the quick start beginner box. So this little joy here. I do want to run this on the channel shortly. It's really cool. I like quick start books and quick start rules because it usually will bring down the rules into a really small, easy to learn suggestion. Like easy to learn, like just a little bit of tidbits. It doesn't bombard you with all the extras, all the additions, all the complications that massive rule books usually will. But it just brings them all down to easy to learn and easy to pick up. So I just want to go through the book itself, the quick start guide. So the beginner box itself has the quick start and the quick start rules and the actual scenario, battle royale. It's got a really, really high quality map. I was actually surprised that it's a map of Seattle, which is the most commonly used Shadowrun scenario or Shadowrun location, and of course map of the actual scenario that we've got. A few pamphlets, bits and pieces here, and some other things about the world pamphlets. But what it also has, and something I really love, is character folios. So it goes through and gives you lots of details, or doesn't just give you a character sheet, but a lot of details on not just the character, but on how the rules affect the character. Because in Shadowrun, the rules are very individualized for each class. So it is a class-based system, and the class are more roles of what you portray. So you're either a hacker, or you're a hacker who does all the stuff behind the scenes and digitally hacks things around them, either wirelessly or jacking into inputs. Or you may be a street samurai who is pretty much the I'm a loner, I want to kill everyone, like I'm a one-man killing machine or wrecking machine. Or you could be a mage or a summoner or things like that. And each class has its own rule set that does run within the rules itself quite well. It's all based from the same set of rules, but every class has rules specifically for them. So when you're playing a Shadowrun game, you generally learn just your class's rules, which does make it a little bit easier. The problem with the GM is that you kind of need to learn everyone's class's rules. So the way I usually get around that is that I trust my players to follow the rules and not cheat, and just trust that they learn just their section rules so they can tell me if I'm doing it wrong, and I follow their lead in their section of rules. And it's a way around having that really big impact of, oh my god, this is so complex. So you have each player learning small sections and you as the games master kind of put those together and also run the stories about that as well. So I absolutely love character folios, and there's several of them. I won't go into them in detail. The other thing they've got is some beautiful, absolutely beautiful dice. So we only use D6s in Shadowrun, and a good handful of D6s. So there's 12 D6s in that set, which is really, really cool. And they've got cards. So cards is something I'm not usually fond of in games, but these cards, and this is not even open, I'm not going to open them. They are for essentially what weapons or what tools you have. So how it works in this is that instead of having to have like all the details on your sheet, you just have like the cards on like with your player, and it's just easy to reference card. Okay, I've got this weapon, it does this, blah blah blah, it adds such and such, these are the rules for that. So it's just a nice little quick reference for that. Again, I'm not a huge fan of them, but it's a nice idea, especially for a beginner box, to have those a bit more simplified for you. And again, super high quality. You can see the gloss coming off the lighting here. It's probably the best map I have seen, quality wise, for a very long time. And I've got maps dating back from like second edition D&D, actually first edition D&D style. So I've got a fair few maps to reference off, and that's some really high quality stuff. So these are the rules we're going to have a look at today. They are, as said, the simpler version of the rules. And we're going to have a look at what I hear is the issue. So Shadowrun, the setting itself is amazing. It always has been. So Shadowrun is a cyberpunk setting with magic, which kind of actually works. So cyberpunk, if you have a look at Cyberpunk 2020 or even the newer Cyberpunk Red, is very much a dystopian future where the corporations have all the power, you don't have any. So it's very much that. But in Shadowrun, they changed a few things where the fact that how they've changed things is that there was essentially an event where the other world came into the normal world. And when I say the other world, magic appeared. Magic appeared, and there was a fracture, and people started, like elves started being born, or people that were already human started evolving into elves, or to trolls, or to orcs, etc. And dragons turned up. And in Shadowrun, never make a deal with a dragon. They are the biggest, most powerful things, and they can wipe out entire cities, entire nations, or they can hide behind corporations, which some do. So they're the big bad evil. So like the setting itself is really different from cyberpunk, but it's often referred to as a cyberpunk setting. The reason why it is different is because of that, because of the magic as well, and because you've got different races. And I really like it. You're a part of a society called the Sinless. Generally speaking, everyone has a sin, which is essentially your security identification number, and you're generally going to be one of those that don't, one of the downtrodden that don't even actually own a sin. You're not even a citizen. You're not a person. You can't access healthcare. You can't access anything. You have to buy fake licenses and fake sins, fake identifications, and you go through them left, right, and center. Each time they get burnt, each time you get busted, you just burn it off. You buy another one. And that's kind of how it works. You're part of that under society, and it works really well. But being part of that under society, you're a deniable asset, and by deniable asset, you work for the mega corporations or from gangs or for other bits and pieces that can afford you, and you're essentially working as a group, as how can I put it, as a quasi-military strike force. It's probably the best way of putting it. So you get your hands on some powerful items, powerful weaponry, powerful cybernetics, even powerful magic. But there's always that catch, as the law enforcement are always a few steps above you in power. And so one of the things that is kind of an unspoken thing, or doesn't really get spoken of much when it comes to Shadowrun, is that there's this unspoken cold war between the players and the games master in Shadowrun, because the players can come up with ideas which can break the world when you have combinations of magic and cybernetics and technology, etc. But the GM, in theory, has access to that as well. So the GM and the players just like don't push things too far. There's that little balance you got to try to have. That the GM has to enforce that downtroddenness and the whatnot and the untrustworthiness of everybody, but the players, in theory, can break everything with the amount of power that they can obtain, and so you can't go too far with that. So, but it does work. It does kind of work. Now, the system itself is very different from most the most common systems used in roleplay. So, the system is sort of dice pool system, and how a dice pool system works is that you have your attributes and your skills are out of essentially 1 to 9. They can go a little bit higher, but that's really extreme exceptions. So you add the number for your attribute, the number for your skill, and that's how many dice you roll. So you can actually start rolling large amounts of dice. That's why you've got 12 dice in the beginner box. Now, you roll all those dice, all those d6, and if you roll a 5 and a 6, that's classed as a hit or success, and you total all those up. If you roll a 1, that's called that's a failure, or not. It's actually minuses one of those successes. So that's kind of how it works. You try to get as many successes as possible, and because it's not just getting a one success. You usually will have to get 2 or 3 successes to succeed a task, and sometimes more complex tasks can go even higher. But when you're rolling against somebody, it's your successes versus their successes. Whoever wins wins. So that's kind of how the system works. It's very different from, as I said, the more common D20 skill plus attribute bonus plus a D20 or D10 or etc. So that's the more common game system. But it's the same system that's also used in Vampire the Masquerade. They use D10s instead of D6s, and it's been used for a few different systems throughout the years. It's just the less common of the game systems of the TTRPGs. So, yeah, that's pretty much everything. Pretty much everything I could really talk about in the more rundown of everything. I will say that it is a rules-heavy system. This is the first game system which we've done our book club, which is a heavy system, heavy rules. That is. That's why I suggest having the players learn just their subsystems for their class. And as the GM, as the storyteller, the games master, etc., you use the player's knowledge to back you up. And it's the players teaching you or helping you out, and you're working together as a cooperative when it comes to the rules, because it can get quite complex. And if you're as the GM looking to use the spellcaster, speak to your player, learn from your player how things work. That way you don't have to grind through usually quite a thick book. So we'll get into the rules here. So this, as I said, the quick start rules. It does have a little bit of a shade, by the way, just because it's a white background. I didn't want to put a white background of the PDF onto the screen because it gets bright. So we've got the introduction. Welcome to the role playing. In the sixth world in Shadowrun, you roleplay criminals in a dystopian future filled with magic, fantastic creatures, artifacts, trying to score the biggest heist while avoiding the omnipresent megacorporations who control it all. Maybe your next score will be your last, or perhaps you'll live long enough to become a street legend. There's only one way to find out. So it's kind of, that's pretty much what I was saying. It's very dystopian. You have no power. But by having no power, you can get quite rich, and you usually will be spending that richness on upgrades for yourself. Being that cybernetics or whatever you want, armoring your vehicle, etc. Grenade launchers, flashbangs, it's all available at your fingertips in this universe. Or The other one is getting a dock wagon. We've got a dock wagon contract is essentially heavily armed police, so heavily armed medics or ambulance that turn up, shoot anything in their way to get to you, and it will extract you shooting anything in their way. But that's at the very highest levels. Dock wagon's kind of a weird thing, but I really like it in this setting. So the rhythm of the game settings setting up situations, rolling a handful of dice based on the selected actions and responding to these results. The rules here are to help tell stories and make consequences feel important. No limit to the stories or the fun. And I like how that's been written. So you're working together to essentially really push the limits of what you can do, what your character can do, and you can actually, as I was trying to say, you can go really far in those actions. It can go really over the top in that action hero style. And the system really lends to that action hero style, though you're not always a hero. Just really pointing out you're not always the hero. So the flow of the basics is the game master describes the systems, your players describe their action and roll dice to see if that action succeeds, and then the game master again describes the outcome. I kind of like the newer systems where you have the players describing more. I don't always like everything being lumped onto the GM. I like the players doing the descriptions, especially if the players describing the outcomes. That's kind of how a lot of systems are moving to, a lot of the more younger systems. So yeah, so the skill ranks are from 1 to 9 right here, and your attributes are usually between 1 to I think they can go up to about 12, depending on your race. That's where your attributes come in. Your races can change things and whatnot. So you roll the number of dice which you have in your skill, and the number of dice which you have in your attributes. You can have penalties to that or bonuses to that, and you essentially roll as many, you roll them all the 5s and 6s are hits, and all the 1s are a glitch. And so you're trying to get as many successes as possible, and you're trying not to get more 1s than successes, that's for sure. So yeah, glitches: when more than half of the results of the test is 1s, the result is a glitch. A glitch means that something goes wrong. A glitch isn't catastrophic. However, think of glitches are opportunities for the game master to narrate an action of an unexpected result, a complication or embarrassment. Even if it succeeded, in fact, it is possible to succeed a test by meeting the threshold and still have a glitch. This would mean that the player succeeds in the task, but something unexpected also happens. So it's up to the game master or the players as well to narrate and get through that. So you can actually succeed and fail at the same time, or succeed with an issue, with a complication, with a glitch. So I like that they have like the plus and minus at the same time. Again, it's not really a system I'm familiar with. I've been playing far too long and everything in my mind is like black and white. So you succeed or you fail. The Edge of the Empire style system where you succeed with a penalty or with a complication, or you fail but with a success, kind of really messes with my mind. I'd need to actually play in one of those games to get more used to that style. But we do have Edge of the Empire as well in the Beginner Box series. So again, you describe the outcomes. The character sheets are pretty simple. The meta type is your race. That's kind of, meta type is a new how can I put this? New description. Where you'd usually say race, it's called a meta type. So you can be dwarves, elves, humans, orcs, trolls, and there's other versions as well. There's other races as well, but less common. So trolls are really, really big, and they're really, really strong. And they have horns, and they have a very heavy weight, so everything actually has to be sized up for them. Their weapons are bigger, their armor's bigger, their motorbikes or whatever is also going to be bigger because they're just bulky. But everything in the sixth world is able to be sized, which kind of works. Elves are usually the bunny. They're the refined civilization, the refined everything. And the dwarves, stocky, perseverance, etc. So everything, like, you can play exceptions. You can play the smart troll, for instance. You don't have to play him as a brawler or her as a brawler. You can have a elf who is a street samurai who is very combat heavy. You don't have to lend between one and the other. You can customize to work together. So then you have your attributes. So you got your physical attributes, mental attributes, special attributes, etc. Edge is a really important thing. Edge is kind of like your luck. Now, in previous editions, Edge was always there, but it wasn't regenerated very quickly, and so it wasn't as big a thing, wasn't as inbuilt to the system. Edge in the 6th edition, or the 6th World Edition, is the actual breaking from what I hear. So Edge comes back by giving yourself by having an advantage. And it's kind of like it's a weird thing, and it can give you some really powerful things. So you kind of, if you're really gimping the system or pushing the system, you want to kind of, or you tend to give yourself ways of getting edge back really quickly so you can use it very quickly. And it's not really how I like things. So you have condition modifiers as well. So as you start getting more damaged, you get minuses to your rolls. So if you can see here, it goes -1s, -2s, -3s, -4s. And I like that idea. So it just shows you that as you take more and more damage, you're less competent at what you're doing. And so that's -1 dice to your rolls too. Initiative isn't your normal initiative, like from what you may be used to in other systems. So initiative is rolled. You're rolling the amount of dice in your initiative table, so your initiative calculation, and you're not doing the hits. You're just adding the numbers together. You really want to roll as high as possible, because what happens is that you can have multiple actions or multiple turns, or sorry, multiple actions inside the turn order. So it's a cyclical turn order. You may have the highest person at 24, and they may have 3 actions in that. They may have one at 24. May have one at so you drop down by 15, I think. So you drop down by 5, I believe, and then you drop down again and again and again. It's kind of a weird system, but it really works because you can actually deliberately lower yourself in the system as well to rate for someone else to hold an action. So if you hold an action, you're actually dropping your initiative order till when you start again. Then you go, okay, this is where I'm going to act. And then you act from that one just above what the person that you're acting against. And then you come down and you can do that again. It's kind of a weird system, but it really, really works for a tactical system. It just would take a bit to get used to. Again, this is a rules-heavy system. But again, if you get used to it, if you get a grip together that gets used to it, you could really push the speed up and make things happen really fluidly. And there'd be small tips and tricks to get around things. So you also have a defense rating. This is how prepared you are to take a blow or to encourage it to miss you. It's a combination of your body, worn armor, and other effects, including augmentations and magic. It's an abstract number and can be modified by gear or qualities, and is only used in comparison to the opponent's attack rating. So Edge is the Shadowrun. Much of Shadowrun is structured around gaining and using Edge. Edge is represented all the ways you can get ahead in a situation, whether it is innate bit of luck you carry with you, or a tactical advantage you gain to exploit at the right time or the accumulated effort of a bunch of small decisions. Spending edge represents the times that you bring advantages to bear to exceed your normal capabilities. So, as I said, edge is really, really important. So it's I don't really like it. Previously, it was always there, but it was less. But this is inbuilt. As I said before, you have your skill plus your intuition. Then you also have your threshold. So when you're rolling, your threshold is how many hits you're looking to get. So in this situation down the bottom here, you've got your outdoor skill, the amount of dice you've got, the amount of points you've got in the outdoor skill, that's the amount of dice you have for that. Your intuition, the amount of dice you have that's your linked attribute to your outdoor skill. So you may have, say, 6 dice, and your threshold is 3. That's how much you need to get. And your test is the outcome from that. So you're trying to get the amount of stuff into that, trying to get as many as possible without, of course, glitches. So if you reach 3 successes, but you also have 3 1s in that, then you can actually succeed again with a glitch. It doesn't have to be catastrophic. I like that it doesn't have to be catastrophic. There used to be a system, or maybe in the full system itself, having catastrophic glitch where you have 0 successes and have half or more glitches. So that's also possible. At least that used to be it could be in the full system. It's not in the basic rules here. So you can buy hits as well. So by buying hits, what you can do is go, okay, so I'll skip that. We'll go back to opposed rolls. So opposed rolls is your stealth plus agility versus perception plus intuition. So it's just pretty much your opposed who wins in that situation. And even if you're equal, it may not be like, even if they get close, they may be alerted to something maybe there, and they may give you a disadvantage later. They may go, even if you pass, but they got really high, they can start going to your direction, but they don't know you're specifically there. So you may have to try a different route or try a different technique. So generally how things work in Shadowrun, how the mission works in Shadowrun, by the way, is you plan, you try to go in without shooting, you use your face, who's your negotiator, who's your manipulator, etc. You use your hacking and to disable things, and at some point along the way, something goes wrong. And as soon as something goes wrong, the guns get pulled out and the mages start casting fireballs and all shit goes to hell. That's your general Shadowrun right there. The idea is to go quiet. The reality is no. But it's possible. It's possible to go quiet. It's possible to succeed in that. You tailor your missions to how your group works too. And you can tailor your group to run specific missions, or you can tailor your group to avoid specific missions like wet work, which is assassination or murder missions. You can go, look, we don't do that. That's off the table. We will not do that. And then you don't accept work along them lines. So you can always try again. If you miss a check, you can try again. But each time you try again, you have -2 penalty to your dice pool, unless you can change the circumstances. If you can wait a while, and that's the GM's discretion, you can come back and go, okay, let's try this again properly. Or if you can have using different tools, different skill check, or etc. That's how you can avoid getting that -2, but otherwise you're getting -2 each time you try to do the same thing over and over again. You can buy hits, so every 4 dice that you have for your dice pool, you can say, okay, I'm going to buy a hit. I'm not going to trust the dice. I've got enough skill. I should be able to do this. I don't want to risk stuffing something up. So I'm just going to buy hits. So that's also possible. I think it's more fun rolling dice, but it is possible. Okay, so your threshold guidelines are down here. So simple task is a 1, more complex is 2, Normal starting point for a simple task is 3. More difficult or impressive enough to accomplish is 4, etc., etc. So that's the amount of hits you can. As it's got like 7 there. You can get higher than 7. I've seen higher than 7 for the very elite and longer running games. But for a begin box, I don't see more than 7 actually happening, because you're not going to have that amount of skill. So your edge rules. This is your gaining edge. So you can gain edge in combat or during a hacking, having an attack action or defense action 4 higher than your opponents, or by having a clear advantage in a social situation. See the social situations table. So edge can be awarded by the game master if they feel circumstances, or such as positioning or visibility, can give a character a clear advantage, or if they feel the character has made an especially good role-playing decision. So we'll go into the edge boosts. So edge boosts are straightforward. They're straightforward add-ons that you can throw into a role. You can add edge. So when you add edge to them, depending on your boost, it changes bits and pieces. So you can only use one edge. So you can only use edge once per action. Like, that's important. Only once per action, but they can do so much, and they can be used out of actions too. So one edge boost, you can re-roll 1 dice. When you're rolling initiative, you can add 3 to your initiative score, but it has to be done before, like, at that time. Can't add differently. So 2 edge boosts get +1 to a die roll, so you can change a 4 to a 5. Give an ally edge as well, so it costs you 2 to give an ally 1, which is kind of important that you're losing in that. You can negate 1 edge from a foe. So again, if you're going against someone, it's costing you 2 to negate 1 from a foe. Not all foes will actually have edge. It's kind of a special thing. So a boss or someone higher, or if you're ever facing another running team, generally speaking, run away. They're going to be better than you. But generally speaking, not many people are going to have edge. So where are we up to? 3 edge bonuses. You can buy 1 automatic hit. You can heal 1 box of stun. 4 boosts. Add edge to your dice pool. So adds your edge bonus or edge rating as your dice pool bonus to increase that. That's pretty good. And make 6s explode. Ooh. Okay. So exploding dice is another old system which it's been around for a long time, but not many modern systems use it anymore. It's something I usually don't like as well. But so what it means is that if you roll a 6, which is your maximum on your dice, you get to roll again. It's called exploding dice, so you get to roll again and again and again. So in this case, you actually have to spend 4 edge bonus or edge on that to increase it to get to that, to be able to unlock that type of thing. That could be really cool. Also, by spending 4 edge, you can heal yourself 1 point of physical damage. Just 1. Which isn't much. Welcome, Bernie. Thank you for joining the Goblin Cave. Thank you for joining the Goblin Horde. We need as many goblins as possible to fight off the evil kobolds that keep on attacking my studio. Okay. With 5 edge, you can count 2s as glitches for a target. So that's kind of really nasty. I like that too. Or you can create a special effect, Game Master's discretion. So combat sequence is grab dice, distribute edge, roll dice, soak damage, bring the pain. So that's a lot to think of. When you're playing something like a D&D 5th edition, you grab your dice, roll your attack, compare it to the AC, you'll have damage. Done. In this, you grab dice, you use your edge before rolling the dice. You can roll your dice, then you soak damage. So your armor, oh sorry, not your armor, your constitution essentially removes that damage. You soak it, or your armor drops that damage and soaks it. So we'll go into the soaking damage because that's something usually in your concept for people that aren't used to this type of thing. So first off, if you miss, you don't have to do this step. If your attacker, so if the attacker tagged the defender, bring the weapon damage value to your modified previous step here. So now the defender rolls. So sometimes your attack roll adds to the amount. So if you get 3 successes, that adds to the weapon damage. That's what you're trying to do here. Yeah. You can also use edge after rolling 2. Yeah. So it comes in all over the place. It can come in all over the place, which is kind of a weird thing. That's kind of like it comes here. It says right at the very top of this page, grab dice, distribute edge, roll dice, soak damage, then bring the pain. But it's not always in that order. You can do it after the dice. You can do it when someone else is rolling. You can do it before initiative. It kind of comes in. The whole system is built around this edge mechanic, which is kind of weird. But with the soaking damage, what happens is when you attack, you add the amount of successes to the damage of that attack. So if you get 5 successes on your attack damage, add that to your weapon damage. So your weapon damage may be 3, add the 5 to 3, that's 8. That's a really big hit. So it's really good to have a high skill because that will add to your damage. But then the defender rolls their body versus body as a damage resistance. Each 5 or 6 cancels each success with a soaking it, reduces the amount of incoming damage. So this is a chance that they can use. So if they haven't used their edge yet, this might be a chance to lessen the damage. So they can also use the edge here. Again, edge throughout the system. So what happens is that when you roll your attack, you add the amount of hits you get to the successes, and they have to soak as much as that as possible. So people like things like trolls, characters or meta-humans like trolls usually have a lot of constitution, and they will soak a huge amount of damage. And then if you armor on top of that, again will soak a huge amount of damage. So it's going to be hard to actually hit them and do damage. It's only after that's when the damage is applied, after that soak. So I've always liked that system. It does slow down combat a little bit. So when you're playing, what you need to do is you need to be paying attention quite a bit to everything going on the table. Often in games such as, say, Dungeons and Dragons, where you're not really paying attention to combat until it's your go, or unless even when the GM or someone says, "Oh, you're being hit," you go, "Oh, sorry, what?" In this situation, you need to be paying attention. You need to be on the ball. You need to have your handful of dice ready to soak that damage to keep the speed. To keep the speed going in the actual combat. You need to be ready to have dice ready to soak how much. And I've seen this done successful with in a tabletop game. So face-to-face, God, I missed that. In a face-to-face game where players would have little dice boxes, clear dice boxes with the amount of dice for their soaked dice, or the amount of dice for attacks which they're commonly using. And so all they do is they flip it over, and that's their dice rolled. They don't have to they don't have to count a certain amount of dice. They don't have to add up things and then roll their dice. They've got them in a box already ready. And I think that was a really great idea. I've never seen that done elsewhere, but I think it was a really great idea that, okay, soaked dice, here's my soaked dice damage done. Okay, I've got 3, I soaked 3, done. And you don't have to count, like, okay, I've got 6 soaked dice, I need to get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, roll. It just saves time. And this is a system which can get very clunky, very slow, saving time, and paying attention, really, really important. Because again, it's a rules heavy system, so you want to be able to speed up that. And rules heavy systems get very, very slow when it comes to combat. But also on the other side, rules heavy systems are generally really dangerous when it gets to combat. Really, really dangerous. So that can be really fun in itself. That's your combat rule. So combat rounds and player turns. So a combat round is approximately 3 seconds long in the game world and consists of one player turn for every one combat. During their turn, each participant gets an allotment of actions to use. The basic action allotment for each player is one minor action, one major action per turn. Players get an additional one minor action for every initiative dice they have. Since everyone starts with at least one initiative dice, that means most players get one major action, two minor actions. Actions can be traded between minor and major, but there are restrictions. The major damage action can be used to perform a minor action. Simple as that. A character can also trade 4 minor actions into one major action. Okay, so that gets a bit clunky. So the more initiative dice you have to roll, the more actions you can get, which is pretty cool. And you can trade them in to get bigger actions. So you get one major plus one minor plus how many initiative dice you have. But if you have multiple initiative dice, you can trade up to get them, or you can even use your big one to do multiple minors as well, or do additional minors, I should say. Actions can be traded between minor and major, but the restrictions, we've got that. So simple actions sidebar up here. At the right describes all the actions fall under minor and major. Each action, etc., etc., etc. So each action has a note next to it indicating that it can be performed this is either initiative or any time. So you can actually, there's initiative order is more of guidelines, is kind of what it's hinting at. So you've got here, say, counterspell as an any time. So you can counterspell at any time, but it's a major action. You're choosing to do your major action to counter someone else's action, to counter someone else's spell. It's actually nice to actually have that, because sometimes another player's going, oh, I wish I was going to do this, but this spell is blocking me. Well, if you haven't gone yet, you can do your major action to dispel it to allow them to do it. But when it comes to your turn, you don't have a major action. You've already used it elsewhere. You've also got astral projection and perception. So astral projection is essentially slipping your consciousness out of the real world and into the spiritual world. The spiritual world is pretty much the same, but you don't really see people, you see auras. So if there's someone invisible, you may be able to see an invisible aura. But if there's a ghost there and they're not happy, they can attack you. And that's a thing in this game. Spirits are a thing. It's kind of weird, but it can make combat really strange and really, it's like you think, okay, I'm infiltrating this place, everything's good, I'll slip through into the astral plane to go in there and scout to see how many forms there are. But wait, it's a haunted mansion. You didn't know that, and you get attacked. And suddenly your body's limp because you're not actually in there, your spirit is in there, but its spirit's being attacked and your body's limp out here, and there's nothing anyone else can do. And generally this is a game where every person, like every player, or every player character I should say, has a very specific role, and you specialize a lot into that one role. So you have generally a face who does all your negotiations, does does the social manipulation to get through security, etc., and things like that. You have your street samurai, who is essentially your runner gunner. They're your combat machines. You may have a hacker who opens doors for you and manipulates security cameras so you don't get busted, and grabs data where they can, without even getting into a building. Or they can turn off other people's guns that are trying to attack you. That's a cool thing. You may have a rigger. A rigger is very similar to a hacker, where a rigger manipulates physical machines. So if there's a security turret, yes, a hacker can bust into it to disable it, but a rigger may be able to bust into it and control it. They also may have combat machines or combat robots, or little spy drones like the size of a fly, like flying, like chasing after a truck which is getting away, and you're just following it with this fly or whatever. So you've got other options with riggers as well. Or you could have shamans or mages, and again, they all have their own specific roles. But you have to kind of work together to protect each other, because maybe the hacker is on the ground hacking into the enemy's weapons, but they're vulnerable. They have a body in meat space just there, and you have to protect them. So it's kind of a weird combination where, yes, everyone's got their specific roles, but their roles can be very disadvantaged for the party as well, and they're only relying on their own ability. It's very hard for, say, a samurai to protect someone in cyberspace, or in, like, when they're programming something, or when they're hacking something, or when they're astral projecting. They can't really protect. They can't do anything in that area, but they can protect their body. That's about all they can do, because their body's just sitting there on the ground, behind the counter, behind the overturned table, etc. So it's really weird, but it works well. So there's special rules for combat. We're going to skip a few of these. Generally, I don't go into a lot of details when it comes to the specifics when I go through these, because this is something that you should be buying yourself and reading through yourself. And so you can get this as well at Catalyst Games over there, catalystgameslabs.com. Check them out. They're the IP owners of ShadowRun. ShadowRun was actually made by FASA many years ago, by not Mitch Gilman. I can't remember the creator. Anyway, it's been owned by a few different companies over the years. Yeah. So you got attack rating, range. So you've got range categories as well. So every weapon has range, etc. We won't go into that very much as well. What else is there to go through? One thing that's really important. So we'll scroll up. Yeah. So one thing is important in this game as well. It's probably not going to be touched on in these rules, but this is a level-less system. So it is a class-based system, but it's a level-less system. So there's no levels. How you gain experience is essentially by doing runs. You may get a little bit of experience at every session, and you may get more experience for completing a run or doing it successfully, or even if you fail, you may get less, etc. But you spend that experience as a point buy system, and that's really important. So you can customize your character totally, and it's really important to be able to point this out, that you can customize your character totally by essentially buying points here and there. And it's really, I like point buy systems. It expands the ability to roleplay so much more than level systems, where each level you get a certain bonus, but every time, like every player that gets that level will get that same bonus. But what if you want to go a different direction? What if you want to go stealth? What if you don't want to go to buy more guns? You want to get better in guns. If you want to go stealth, you want to be able to climb, or you want to be able to do other things. Well, in Shadowrun, with a leveler system, you just buy points in that direction, and that's how it works. And it really meets really means you can customize and personalize every character to be very, very different from each other. So in theory, yes, you could have 3 street samurais in a party and they're all very, very different. Problem is, when I explained before, is that like every time, like you're lessening the party by having 3 specialists in the same area, where 1 street samurai is supposed to be able to handle all of combat. You want to be able to diversify your party. You want to have maybe a hacker or rigger. Those two can work to like be one or the other. Generally speaking, you could have a shaman or a mage as well. Again, that could be one or the other. You want to have at least a face to get through the social side of things, but that face could also have some magic, or that face could also have some combat. The face is kind of like a half, like they're specialized in the negotiations and the social side, but they'll generally have a backup somewhere else. So you want to kind of have not really a balanced party, but a multi-focused party. So multiple focuses, so you can approach different situations like lots of different ways. Because generally speaking, you're breaking in and doing illegal stuff. So you want to be able to take as many different jobs as possible to be able to get through the game and get lots of money and fame. So that's one of the things I really like about the system is the classless. Sorry, no, it's classed, but it's levelless. And a lot of systems are either totally classless and totally levelless, or classless but levels. The most common systems, of course, is going to be Dungeons & Dragons, Pathfinder, etc. Going to be classed and leveled, and it kind of really shoehorns you into things, which I don't like as much. So yeah, I just really wanted to touch on that. I'm not going to go into all the other bits and pieces because, I mean, although it's only 26 pages, which is actually pretty good. Most beginner boxes that I see are around that 16 to 25 page mark. And this being a really rules heavy game, still was only 26 pages. So they've cut out a lot of stuff just to keep it simplified. They do have some nice tables at the back. I'll come to the back as well. These are your four of your characters as well. So really broken down to the most simplest forms. But you've got, where's my tables? There we go. So you've got pages at the back for very simple guidelines and quick reference, which is really nice. I find it strange that in the beginner boxes, they don't usually have these, or they don't have even a GM style screen. It's really important. If you're learning the game to teach others, give your GM, give your players as much resources, as much quick reference material as possible, please. It's really good. Although I will say that, as I said, that the character sheets are more portfolios, so it does go into what things do. So the hacker character will have rules and explanations on what and how they do their stuff, which is really good. But yeah, it's nice to have things like this to actually be able to reference as a separate sheet that you can give your players. Have one for your players, one for yourself to reference. It makes things so much easier. So yeah, that's probably most of the details I'll go into. I won't go into a huge amount of all the, as I said, hacking, spells, etc. It is there when you're playing. As I said, the best recommendation I can say for a game like this is to have each player learn the rules for their class, for their character only, and as the GM, don't focus on learning all the rules because it can get very, very overwhelming. But use your players' knowledge to your advantage and rely on your players to know the rules to help you out. You just focus as the GM on the flow of the situation, on the story, and getting things working fast and quick and smooth, because it can get bogged down really quickly. And of course, the story, of course. But as the GM, you'll want to try to focus on that, not on the rules itself. Let your players focus on the rules, which sounds stupid, but it works, because that way you don't have to learn like the core mechanics. Everyone should know that one. As a GM, you should know the core mechanics, but you don't have to learn rigging. You don't have to learn summoning. You don't have to learn astral projections and magic. You don't have to learn hacking. You also don't have to learn rigging. Like, yeah, it can get really overwhelming. Like, that's like 4 or 5 things you don't need to do. So each player learning the core, and then you as the GM just focus on the overall. And I think that works probably the best for a system which is so heavily nuanced and heavily personalized. So that's my recommendation. I do like Shadowrun Universe. I think it's amazing. I've used the 5th World book. So the 5th edition is the one that I played with. Again, we only played maybe about 5 or 6 sessions. And it got to the stage where my character was going to use the money that he'd made over those sessions to hire another Shadowrun group to assassinate 2 of our own player characters because they were totally not working with our team and they were making us look bad. So look and reputation is a big thing. So yeah, I was going to assassinate, but hire someone else to assassinate. That's how Shadowrun works. It can be really, really... Like, we play a lot of Pink Mohawk games in our studio here. Like, Pink Mohawk is a Shadowrun term where everything's just fun, crazy, and we just go with the flow. It's about just having fun. You can play this Black Trenchcoat as well, where everything is totally serious. The mission is everything. Like, the reputation is everything. If someone puts a dent in your reputation, you assassinate them. Like, it can get really weird. But we play a lot of Pink Mohawk. We play a lot of just, let's just have fun. Because that's what I'm here for do. That's what our community's here to do. We're here to have fun. We're here to just enjoy role-playing, enjoy different systems. But that's where those 2 terms come in. In Shadowrun, Black Trenchcoat and Pink Mohawk. And we totally do Pink Mohawk around here. But it's up to you and up to your group to decide on how you want to play the game. You can play it totally serious, and that's absolutely valid. We just go the opposite here. But that's my rambling. Thank you for coming in. I'm just going to go off stream now and have a bit of relaxation. Not feeling the best day, but it's nice to be back. Nice to be talking about Shadowrun because I like it. Oh, by the way, I've also used the Shadowrun 5th edition system to do a superheroes game because it has cybernetics, it has magic, it has all these bits and pieces you can do, and it worked really, really well for a superheroes game. And I'm not kidding, it worked really well for superheroes. But that was 5th edition, where it doesn't have so much reliance on this edge mechanic. And I've seen games with this 6th edition where the players were all veteran Shadowrun players themselves and Shadowrun gamers for years old. And they were editing the system or homebrewing the system, you could say, right from the start. Because there was issues, there was problems with the mechanics right from the start. And it got to the stage where they had modified the system so much that the next thing to modify was Edge. And Edge being the absolute core mechanic of the system, they're like, yeah, we can't do this. We can't keep playing, we can't keep doing it. So that really makes me apprehensive of running 6th edition. I'm much more prefer 5th edition. Yes, it's still not the best, but the setting is so good. I know of people that use Fate or other game systems just to play in the setting, just to play in the Shadowrun setting. They use other more generic systems to play in the setting because the setting is so good. The Shadowrun setting is just amazing. I just don't know if the rules live up to it, and the Edge system is, from what I've seen, kind of, yeah. I don't know if it can be balanced, but dice pool systems I really like. I really like that, and I like it so much more. Like, I like so much about the system. It's just the core mechanic of Edge. I'm a bit cognitive of. I'd have to maybe play it a bit and maybe change. I don't know. We'll see. But thank you everyone for coming in. Thank you for the follow as well. It's means so much to me, Bernie. That's it for our TTRPG this week. We do have our Discord. Come and chat with me there. I will probably be in the Discord for a while, just chatting and like just rambling and whatnot, because I do like this, and I might actually, we will be actually doing a Shadowrun beginner box soon on the channel, because why not? Let's show off Shadowrun. Let's show off how good it can be, possibly. And again, Syrinscape's the audio that we've been using. We've been playing the Cyberpunk Forlorn Help in Syrinscape, and we've actually been doing the live gig music. That's what we've been having in the background. So thanks to them. They're not a sponsor. I just love their audio. But for me, that's a bye for now.